Historical Society and Pioneer Museum. We're excited to welcome everyone here in person and also joining us online to our first weekend Friday program and Founders Day celebration. This is being broadcast live on Fbg.Live thanks to our event underwriter, the Hill Country Historical Foundation. We're very grateful for the support and excited to have extended outreach for our museum. The live stream is available post-program as well on our website. If you will silence your phones, we're going to get started this afternoon. Our retail service manager, Jessica Dion, is going to introduce our speaker, and we really hope you enjoy the presentation.
Thank you all for being here. We are lucky enough to have both the author and the illustrator of this beautiful book here today. In the back of the room, we have Catherine Gale Jacobs. She's a graphic designer, photographer, and artist who lives in New Braunfels with her husband and son and a very large dog named Brian, I hear. Off the clock, you'll often find her behind the lens, capturing moments through photography, unwinding with watercolor paintbrush in hand, and exploring the Texas Hill Country with her family. She also happens to be Miss Susan's daughter. So Susan Thomas is a native of Texas and a daughter of the Republic of Texas, who grew up loving Texas history and the stories of the courageous men, women, and children who lived here over 175 years ago. Susan is a certified academic language therapist and spent many years helping children with dyslexia learn to love reading. She grew up and raised her family in Houston and now lives in New Braunfels with her husband and 2 dogs. Her hobbies are volunteering, reading, fishing, boating, hiking, and traveling. She has 3 married daughters and 3 grandchildren who are learning to love Texas and reading also. So please welcome Miss Susan Thomas and to talk about her book.
Hey guys, thanks for having me today. Thank you so much to the Pioneer Museum for this opportunity to be here. I'm really excited about this. It's going to be a lot of fun. But before we get started, I have a really important question for you guys, okay? Especially you back there in the red wagon. So it's a really burning important question. Are y'all ready? What's a snake's favorite subject? Do you know? That's right, history. And that is the one and only thing I have in common with snakes. I do love history, and I love especially being here at the Pioneer Museum, surrounded by so much amazing history. The way that they have painstakingly taken care of the artifacts and the buildings and offer opportunities to the public to come and enjoy that. Such a blessing to this community. Think about all the small Texas towns you drive through that has nothing like this. This is really, really a phenomenal thing that you guys have. And thank you for letting me be a part of it. You guys be sure and come back tomorrow if you can for all of the, and tell your friends, all the free fun activities tomorrow for Family Day and Founders Day. There's going to be all kinds of live enactments and things going on the grounds. Now, about now, you're probably wondering why I'm here. Well, in 1988, I was given this book, and 37 years later, this is why I'm here. This book is titled Fredericksburg, the First 50 Years, and it's filled with firsthand accounts of those first early German settlers coming into the Texas Hill Country. Now, why is this book so important to me, you ask? Well, my great-grandfather was the printer. I don't know if you can see the arrow is pointing to his name in the book. His name was Arvid Hillman. Nice, good German name. And he came in 1871 to be the printer for the local paper. That paper was called the Wochenblatt. And I only listen to Google Translate about 25 times to say it that badly, to butcher it that badly. So I apologize for my lack of German, and I appreciate your patience. So the paper was printed in this building. This building is still there. It's right down the road. You can drive by it. You'll see the red roof. It's sort of if you're heading out town towards Luckenbach, and it'll be on the left-hand side. Another great thing about this town is all of the beautiful houses that just the community has really treasured and preserved. This building is a private residence, so maybe don't go knock on the door and say, "Can I see an old paper?" So they probably don't have that, but rumor has it that my grandfather was born in that upstairs room. Now, my dad used to love to tell me stories about how his family came, or how his great-grandfather came to Fredericksburg. As I said, he came in 1871 to print the paper, but I often asked him, "Dad, what about the other side of the family? He married when he got into Fredericksburg. What about those people?" And the only story he knew to tell me, and if he told me once, he told me 100 times, is how his granddad got there, and he had been a printer with his father in Spremberg, Germany. And in around the time period of 1871, there was some political dissent. I think my great-great-grandfather printed some things that some people didn't like. He thought it best to hustle his kids out of town and into America. So my great-grandfather came in through New York, answered an advertisement for a printer in Fredericksburg, and that's how he got down here in 1871. But as I said, I would ask my dad, "Well, I know we have roots in Fredericksburg before 1871. Dad, do you know anything about that?" "No, don't know anything about that." It's like Fredericksburg didn't exist until 1871. So after a little digging, I had ancestry, he did not. And so I went on Ancestry.com. After a little digging, I found that I had great-great-grandparents, Anna Shoup and John Sipe, both in Fredericksburg in the 1850 census. After a little bit more digging, and I don't know how much y'all have looked at Ancestry before, probably a fair amount, but the script is beautiful, but so hard to read. And sometimes they spelled words incorrectly. The people that were writing down maybe didn't understand the German accent so well, so sometimes names were spelled wrong. But if you dig deep enough, you can usually have a couple of different ways to verify. And so my best knowledge, they came into Fredericksburg from Germany the summer of 1846. There was some documents about the ship Neptune, and I think that is the ship that at least some of them came in on. A sidebar about looking at ancestry. So during COVID, I was at home, my husband was at home, and what else do you want to do when you're bored but look at Ancestry.com? And so I was putting names out there and saying this name and that name, and I happened to mention the name William Shoup, which was Anna's father. And he said, "Well, I have a friend named Willie Shoup. Do you suppose y'all are related?" I said, "I don't know, ask him if he's from Fredericksburg." So he did, he asked him, and he was from Fredericksburg, but he said, "Beyond that, I know nothing, talk to my dad." So I did, I spoke to his father and had a lovely conversation with him, found out, yes, we are related, was able to reconnect with a section of the family that a couple of generations we had lost touch with. So very exciting to be able to make those connections. In a couple of weeks, I'm gonna have coffee with somebody from that side of the family that I've never met. So really fun. So the moral of that story is, you never know who's in your current friend group you might be related to. So just watch out for that. Now, back to why I'm here. Well, as you know, I was gifted this book in 1988, and after I was given this book, I didn't just put it on a shelf. Maybe I did a little bit, but I eventually started reading snippets of it, which intrigued me to read more and more, and I grew to love and be in awe of the courage and the strength of those early pioneers. How did they do it? It's just astounding to me. But as much as I loved reading this book, I knew that the typical upper elementary, middle school reader would likely never have the interest or the ability to read this. It got a little sloggy at points, had a lot of big words or old-fashioned words that would have been really difficult for them to read and enjoy. And because I am a certified academic language therapist and spent so many years nose in books with these kids side by side, teaching them to read, and especially students that reading was a little bit of a difficulty for, I saw what captured their imagination, and I saw what grabbed their attention. And so I set out with the goal of writing a book that would capture the imagination of all children. I wanted to make it accessible, so I decided I would weave some of these wonderful firsthand accounts into a story that all children would love. Now, before we go on, I have another burning question for you. It's really, really important. Are y'all ready this time? Why are writers always so cold? Nobody? Because they're surrounded by so many drafts. And many, many drafts later, here I am. But before I started writing, I started researching and using my imagination. Imagination is the catalyst to learning. If you spark the imagination, learning will follow. Now, I wanted to write a story that would be about what it would have been like to land on the shores of Texas as a German immigrant and travel into Texas into the hill country in 1846. So I had my light bulb, my idea, and I had my history, but I needed the other major elements of historical fiction. I needed my characters, my setting, and my plot. So for inspiration, first thing I needed, characters. So for inspiration, I went to my family. And I love this picture. I don't know how much y'all know about photography at this time period, and I brought a camera with me for y'all to see something similar to what they may have had around this time period. You had to stand very, very still. If you moved at all, it would have a blurry hole wherever you moved. So say you said something, talked, your mouth would be blurry. If you ever see old photographs in like an antique store, flip through them and see if you see a hand that looks like it doesn't exist. You know, it's just the arm stops and then there's nothing else there. And so this is why, one of the reasons I love this picture is thinking about how still they had to stand. I love the fact that my grandfather, Helwig, he's on the far side over there. He's holding onto the table, if you can see that. And then my great-grandfather, Arwood, he's got his elbow. And then my grandmother, Louise Sipe, she's got her hand on his shoulder. And with her other hand, she's holding her daughter, my aunt, great-aunt. And then the daughter is holding on to the baby buggy. Everybody is holding on to something to help them be still. Now, in my imagination, I thought, for my own characters, I thought, I like the idea of a brother and sister. about the age of these two. This picture made me think about them being on opposite sides. How do you think it would have gone if they had been together? Do you think they would have been able to stay as perfectly still? No. Coming from the mom in the back, no. No. There would have been some poking, some prodding, maybe pulling of hair, teasing, mouth moving, certainly not being still. So, in my imagination, I decided to use a brother and sister about this age, and also with a personality type that they really loved each other, but they also were typical brother and sister and liked to tease and have fun together. So this is the inspiration of my two main characters, a brother and a sister, but then I needed also names for them. So I went back again to my own family history. If you remember, my great-grandmother was Anna Shoup. She had a real-life brother named Henry. So I borrowed their names as my fictional brothers and sisters. Now my story starts on the front porch of a house in New Braunfels. By the way, as you know, my daughter is my illustrator. This is one of her great sketches. I'm so happy and grateful that she could join me today. And I have a copy of her original watercolor that was the cover of my book. And I also have a couple of the picture of my family pictures up here if you want to come look at them later. She's a very talented artist, and I'm very grateful for her to take the time to be my illustrator. Now, it's time to set the stage. So I am going to read just an excerpt from my book that helps you see how I set the stage with this brother and sister and their personalities. "Hurry, Mama, I don't want to be late," 11-year-old Anna Shoup blurted as a flutter of excitement rolled around in her stomach. Mama gave a humph as she finished braiding Anna's long blonde hair. Twisting her skirts in her hands, Anna went on, "They'll leave us. I know they will. If we're not there on time, Papa said so. The carts won't wait, and we'll have to catch up." Her brother Henry sat on a nearby bench on the porch of the cabin they had been staying at while they prepared for the next leg of their journey. He was beating his boots together. "Bye, Anna," he teased as he slipped on one well-worn dusty boot. "We'll see you in Fredericksburg. Good luck with the Indians along the way." Anna simply raised her eyebrows and replied, "I think I spotted a scorpion in one of your boots last night. It might still be there." So you can see how I took this brother and sister and developed their personality and their relationship together. Now, as they're preparing to leave, I introduce for Anna a best friend. I think that both of them need a best friend. So it's time to introduce Elizabeth Lehman. As they're preparing to leave, this is what Anna says to her mother. "Mama, do you think I'll have time to stop and see Elizabeth one last time before we leave? I promise I won't stay long. Anna pleaded suddenly. "Anna, you've said your goodbyes," Mama sighed. "You'll see your friend in Fredericksburg in a few months, as soon as she's well enough to travel again." Why would I have Anna's best friend sick right off the bat? Doesn't seem really fair, does it? Okay, to solve this mystery, we need to use our imagination and travel, take a trip with me. Are you beach people? Do you like going to the beach? When you go to the beach, do you think of this? That's a nice beach, isn't it? Sadly, do you think that that's the beach that those early German pioneers landed? No, sadly not. Now travel in your imagination with me to the sandy shores of a beach called Karlshafen, or Indian Point, on the Texas coast near the Matagorda Bay. That's more what it looked like. And they arrived in the winter Now I want you to imagine, look out on the horizon. Can you see ships out there? Their sails fluttering in the wind. Imagine boats being lowered on the sides of these ships, full of people, fully dressed, not in their spandex kind of whatever we would be wearing today, with their skirts and jackets and hats, and they're being lowered down with all of their worldly possessions. Now visualize here on the shore, see pockets of families standing there kind of huddled together, cold, wet, all of their things unceremoniously dumped on the sand. There they were for months, and they didn't have any way to make it into inland Texas. Now, I'm going to read you a first-hand account from this to help you set the stage of what it would have been like in the winter of 1845-46. During the winter of 1845 to 46, the rainfall was exceptionally heavy. Since some immigrants lacked better shelter facilities, they dug caves in the ground. Diseases broke out in Indianola as well as in Galveston, which took a heavy toll of the unacclimated immigrants. The misery was horrible, and 321 persons, including children, died in Indianola and along the way to the colony. So I decided to weave this bleak first-hand account into my story through Elizabeth. Now on page 6 and 7 in my lucky star, this is how I weave that story in. I was so afraid that she would die in Karlshafen. It was awful enough living in that sandy cave on the beach full of horrible bugs. But when cholera started creeping through the camp, I thought we were all going to die. Mama replied, I think it was you who pulled her through, Anna, you and your lucky star. As they did so often, the memories of those awful weeks in Karlshafen, the port of Indianola on the Texas coast, flashed quickly through Anna's mind. She remembered the strain on Mama's face, the exhaustion of each step she took. Anna remembered praying and distracting her friend from her misery by looking at the stars in the night sky and declaring, Elizabeth, look at that big one. That's your lucky star, just like the one on the Texas flag we saw when we first arrived. God put it there just for you. You can't die tonight. Your lucky star won't let you. Well, I think Henry needs a best friend too. His best friend, and here I go back to my family for inspiration, is John Sipe. He is a powerful character and full of mischief. Here is a first-hand account I used to shape his character. It's on page 46. In 1848, the goats of one of the residents had increased to such numbers that they had become a nuisance because the animals would get into all the town lots and destroy the vegetation. One morning, when the flock was in Mr. Henry Mueller's garden, he caught the old billy goat, dressed him with an old jacket which he tied securely around the goat's belly, stripped an old hat over the animal's horns, and released him among the herd. When they saw the billy, they stampeded. Only some time later was the owner able to find some of the goats along the Palo Alto and Bear Creeks. So I took that historical account and I created a story about Henry and John to show their relationship. Henry looked at John and laughed. My mama says we're always getting into sticky situations, but we aren't. Well, if you don't count the time with the beehive and the honey. John, thinking of this sweet, gooey honey, replied, it was worth every sting. But what about the time you dressed up Mr. Mueller's billy goat in that jacket and strapped a hat to its head? All the other goats ran in terror. Well, it It was your fault too, since it was your idea. It took us days to gather them all back. We had to go all the way to Bear Creek to find them. Henry chuckled. Oh well, John sighed as he enjoyed the peace of the cool river. What are friends for but to get you into trouble? So you can see how I use the first-hand accounts of the first 50 years to develop my characters. But they also help me develop my setting. What they saw, smelled, ate, what they wore, how they traveled, what surrounded them was my setting. So to develop my setting, I needed to see in my mind what they saw and travel how they traveled in my imagination. So here's a first-hand account, page 28. After the wagons had crossed the river, making sure I'm on the right one. That's not right. She listened to the sounds of the oxen pulling and straining against their leather harnesses, the snorts and grunts of their hooves clomping along. She heard the creaking of the carts with their wooden wheels clattering on the ground, the slatted sides groaning under their burdens, and the friendly talk of the men in their native German. Anna smiled and wondered who was out there listening and watching. Here's something to think about. What did they bring with them? Was there Amazon, Walmart, HEB Plus? Sadly, no. They had to pack everything in a trunk. And the Pioneer Museum has so graciously set up this trunk for you to look at. They would have brought their Sunday best clothes. They would have brought quilts to sleep on, cooking utensils, cooking pots, and everything that they would need for their new home. On page 17, in the first 50 years, this is what it says about what they were advised to bring. The immigrant is advised to take along linens, summer and winter clothes, shoes, beds, easily transported home and kitchenwares of iron and copper, new leather for harnesses, and garden seeds, packed in small chests. Two things that strike me about this. Beds. They were instructed to bring beds. Do you think that those beds made it all the way to Fredericksburg? It'd be pretty amazing if they did. Maybe a few did, but I bet some were discarded along the way out of necessity. And also that they were told to bring seeds. One thing is we don't know if the seeds they brought were actually good for growing here, but the other thing is that just signifies how there was nothing here for them. It was just rocks and dirt and trees. Now, another thing to think about, how'd they get here? Airplanes, cars, trucks, trains? Sadly, no. They used two-wheeled Mexican ox carts. Well, what about carriages and horses? Surely they at least had that. Well, sadly, Texas had just become a state and the war with Mexico had broken out. The military had commandeered everything to use to take supplies and munitions and things down to the war. So that's why they were stranded on the beach for so many months, because there was no way to go. Some tried to go on foot, it didn't work well. They were just stranded until John Moisbach was finally able to secure a few two-wheeled ox carts. So then they had to pack everything onto this. Now, there is one of these over there. And I'm going to have a little tent set up by the two-wheel ox cart tomorrow, so if you're there, come see me. And this is how they got from point A to point B. Now, the first 50 years also helped me to develop my plot. As I use stories to weave the action, here's an example of a first-hand account that I used to create my story. We made camp in Salado Valley. I unsaddled my horse and led it away from the camp to allow it to graze. Hardly had I done this when I heard a shot in camp. When I arrived, I found Mr. Nabig's stepdaughter, Sophie Mie, had received a glancing shot on the upper part of her left foot. One of the drivers, named Graham, had removed one of my beautiful silver inlaid pistols from the holster, which was fastened to my saddle, and while attempting to put the pistol back in the holster, the hammer snapped and fired the weapon. The wound bled profusely, but we managed to stop the bleeding. Cold water was the only available remedy for such a purpose. We made the young dame reasonably comfortable in the wagon and continued the water applications, but the wound became inflamed and we did not know what to do. So I decided this would be a great story to put in my book, but I needed to weave it into my characters. So on page 44, this is what I wrote. One of the drivers, who Henry met along the trail, held a beautiful pistol with a silver inlay on the handle. As Henry walked by, he was spit-shining its barrel and holding it out at arm's length to admire it. Henry couldn't resist. Palms sweating, his feet pulled him to the man, and he found himself gazing at the weapon in reverence. Do you mind, can I hold it? I'm going to have one someday soon. Papa just said so. Henry breathed with admiration and longing in his voice. Sure, lad, he said, grinning and laughing at Henry's awkwardness. But be careful, that thing's loaded. Putting it into Henry's hands, he said, go ahead, get the feel of it, see? Isn't she beautiful? All at once there was a flash of heat and a roar of the gun. As if it was on fire, Henry dropped the gun in the dirt and looked around with panic. His heart pounded and his face flooded with heat. Then a sickening feeling in the pit of his stomach began to grow. Across the gathering, Anna was sobbing in pain. She was curled into a ball, gasping and sobbing. What have I done? Anna, what have I done? Frantically, Henry made his way through the gathering crowd to where his mother and father were huddled over Anna. Shame and fear washed over him. He was not ready to be a man. He couldn't even handle a gun without shooting someone. No, not someone, Anna. In shame, he ran to their cart and beat his fist against the wooden side, crying out in anger, how could he have been so stupid? So you can see how it's done, how this weaving of history into a story, what's going to happen to Anna? You'll have to read it to find out. Here are a few other inspirational stories from Fredericksburg the first 50 years. Will I use them? Oh, wrong book. During the time when the colony was managed by the Immigration Society, it was customary to fire the cannon, indicating to the lost the way back to their domestic breadbasket. One day, the greatly worried Mrs. Speck came to the Immigration Society's director and reported her husband had become lost while searching for their horses, and he had been gone much longer than expected. The director ordered the cannon to be fired, and boom! The friendly warning to return home echoed through the wilderness. The cannon was loaded again. to repeat the summons when Mrs. Spike shouted, "My husband does not hear that. He is deaf." Tableau. So another fun story that they recorded that really happened. They shot the cannon for somebody that couldn't hear it. I just love the honesty of those firsthand accounts. Another story that is in the firsthand accounts of the first 50 years. Let's see. After the wagons had crossed the river, another shot was heard, and it was soon discovered that the society trooper, a good hunter and marksman, had killed a panther. The animal, after receiving the fatal bullet, attempted a lunge towards the hunter, but it fell dead in the spot. And my last example is from page 78. One day in the spring of 1864, it was at noon on a Saturday, the report reached town that the Comanche Indians had kidnapped Rudolph, the 12-year-old son of Gottlieb Fisher. He was on his way to visit a friend when the Redskins stole some horses and placed the boy on one of them. They traveled about 125 miles before they stopped to eat. He did not return home until he was a grown man with an Indian wife and family. What do you think? Am I going to use these stories? You'll have to read the book to find out. So back to the question, my very first question of why am I here today? Well, it's not just to tell you about the book that my great-grandfather printed, and it's not even to tell you about the book that I wrote about the book he printed. No, it's to give you an imperative. We need to teach the younger generations to love and preserve history. It's a story that needs to be told and retold, like my dad did, and to be written and to be read. These early pioneers had so much courage and grit. I am grateful for those who came before me for so many reasons, but one of the big ones is for having preserved the history. How can we know who we are and where we are going if we don't know anything about where we have come from and what we have been through, the courage shown, the cost paid to be where we are? Let's teach this history to the children. Now, you can't buy happiness, but you can buy books, and that's practically the same thing. So you can buy my book here at the museum. You can tell your friends, encourage them to buy it, not just for me, but again, for the history. That's why I wrote it. I wanted to share this history with the children. I wanted to make it accessible. And so please, please, let's share this history. You can buy it here at the museum. You can buy it on Amazon. Also, I have on my website, I have tools for teachers, for book clubs, for parents. So be sure and go to Susan Thomas, SusanThomasBooks.com. Also, if you would, I would love for you to follow me on Instagram and Facebook to see what schools I'm talking to, what events are going on, and it would just be a blessing and encouragement to me too if y'all would follow me there. And so I wanted to briefly show you my website. Here is the home page, and it has, you know, a little bit of information and some pictures. And then here's my For Teachers tab. And here are my resources. They're all TEKS, designed for the Texas Essential Skills. And there's 4 different lessons that have multiple lessons within those lessons. And I appreciate the person that helped me create those too. So that's awesome. It has fun stuff here. It has Anna dreams about gingerbread cookies. And so I have some gingerbread cookie recipe. I have discussion questions that I created from my own mind. and then I have speaking events and things going on. I do like to speak at schools. I'm speaking at 2 schools in the next 2 weeks. And so share this with all of your teacher friends. And I will put this back up here. So anybody that wants to scan those. Now I'll open it up to questions. Does anybody have any questions? No? I just did such a great job of explaining it.
All right, did everyone get a door prize ticket when you came in? Yes. Okay. We just had a couple just in case we missed anything.
The door prize is a log cabin, a cornhusk doll, and a book.
All right, and Miss Susan is going to help us draw this.
Okay, I'm not looking. Okay, you ready for the number? Okay. 434165. Yay! Y'all be sure and come look up here at these artifacts. Everything here is referenced in my book. There's a whole story about a pot that was left behind, and just think about and imagine them packing all of this stuff and taking them with me. Thank you so much for having me.
We are so happy to have had Susan here. Yes, thank you so much for coming. We also would like to invite you all to join us tomorrow. It's free admission to the museum for the second day to celebrate Founders Day. There is living history presenters on the grounds all day. The historic jail will be open. The Shondoa House will be open. So please come and enjoy the property. Miss Susan will be here at her table, so you can come and ask her questions. After you read the book tonight, you can come and ask her questions. So thank you all for being